Hey guys, I'm learning TFT and I'm sharing my learnings with you so that you can learn and I can learn better as well. I'm excited to share with you a discussion by Grea in the TFT Plus coaching community last night. I did not get a chance to view this video yet, so I'm going to be watching this, taking it in, and providing my thoughts and taking notes on the side as well. I am going to be playing this at 1.5 speed, so if it's too fast, you can slow it down. With that said, let's get started.
So hello, this is Grea here with the 15.5 early meta report. Patch just came out yesterday, so it's still quite early. It's kind of just like an early look at things. Things might develop over the course of the patch. As usual, the session will be recorded and put on YouTube. So if you miss anything and you're still interested in going back, you can go look at that. And that's about it. Let's just get right into it. I guess I would like to make a quick disclaimer about this page. I think looking at stuff like this kind of like top comp page is useful for like kind of just getting an overview and organizing your thoughts, but definitely not too much stock in these numbers. Like for example, you look here, Star Guardian, Jinx, Poppy, and Cassante, 3.9 average plays. You might look at say, oh, that's really good. That's amazing even. Then you scroll down, there's like Star Guardian, Jinx. Scroll down a bit farther. Star Guardian, Jinx, Volibear. Scroll down further. Star Guardian, Jinx, Poppy. There's definitely some like funky stuff with like how they categorize the comps. So some of these numbers are gonna be really inflated, and I wouldn't really look at the actual like average place, win rate, blah blah. They're just not that accurate. Anyway, we can kind of just use this as a reference point to start looking at the comps. Soulfire to Samira, pretty straightforward comp. I'd say it's fairly strong. It's kind of a standard level 8 comp playing on 4 cost. Generally, Samira main carry, Set main tank. The comp gets a lot of power if you actually have an emblem. You do want to play 8 Soulfighter if possible, but without the emblem, you need to find a Gwen, which is sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. And also, the emblem unlocks playing a non-Soulfire unit such as Volibear as a duo carry, which I think is probably the strongest version available right now if you have the items for it. You would like to cap out on Gwen as a secondary carry. The problem is it's not reliable to hit her, and you'll just kind of, if you build for that with like AP items in the early mid-game, you'll kind of just end up with items on a random like Veiga or Lux a lot of the time. And you'd much rather just start itemizing for the Gwen after you already hit her. For example, if you hit her on your 4-2 rolldown, or if you hit her later, you can use the late game carousels and anvils for that. One thing is, even though you're playing Samira main carry, Edgelord is not like completely, absolutely necessary for her. One unit you'll often be playing on the board is Shen, because he's also providing Bastion, which has a lot of value as a team-wide buff, but you don't absolutely have to play Edgelord for your Samira. And other units such as, for example, Udyr, who can give team-wide buffs, can have more value. Generally, the cap of the comp involves Volibear and Braum. However, without an emblem, you would need to be level 10 for that, so you often won't get there. But if you do have the emblem, that fits on 9 and is very strong. You can also just play like other random legendaries if you find them. I do want to shout out or mention, let's see, where are these power-ups? I think by far the best power-up for Samira is On the Edge. Start combat at 65% health, gain 35% damage amp. Pretty straightforward. Even without a healing item, she has built-in Omnivamp, both from her ability and also from the Edgelord trait, which you might not always have active, but even then it's fine. And 35 damage amp is just well above the average power curve of a power-up for a DPS unit. It's obviously, in theory, set off by the drawback, but generally you won't have trouble with this on Samira. You might have some fringe cases where she jumps in and gets one shot, for example, but that can also happen without the power-up, so this is definitely the strongest power-up you can have on her if it's offered to you. And I think that's about all for Soulfighter. Next, moving on, Star Guardian Jinx, another level 8 comp, fairly standard. You're generally playing around Jinx main carry and Poppy main tank. There's a relatively new build that's kind of discovered like late last patch, or at least like popularized. Involves Gather Force as your power-up on Jinx. On cast, gain stacking attack damage equal to 45% of mana spent. You generally want to run this with Spear of Shojin, and that's generally the most powerful kind of setup you can have for this comp, but it's not an absolute necessity. And if you don't have Shojin, I think Gather Force is not that exceptional. And either way, this is kind of repeating myself, this is probably the strongest setup of the comp, but even without it, the comp is completely fine. You can just have some other damage power-up on Jinx. The comp has a lot of flexibility. You can, for example, run Ari as a carry as well with AP items. However, I will say, generally the cap of the comp does not involve Ari, so let me just open up the team builder real quick. I'd say the core of the comp is something like this. Oh, not that. Again, this is generally a Jinx primary carry comp. If you hit Seraphine, you obviously want to play her. I'd say the other Star Guardian is actually fairly replaceable. You can run them if you have nothing else. I think Ari would be generally the first unit you want to cut unless you're specifically playing around her. Her Star Guardian power-up just doesn't offer that much to a Jinx primary carry board relative to the other ones. Syndra is also cuttable, but if you have Seraphine, she does offer 2 Prodigy, which is a team-wide trait, and also is a bit of extra mana for the Seraphine herself, who you do want to be your secondary carry generally. And as for what you would actually play, I think when you're playing around Poppy main tank, Kabuko is basically mandatory. Not only does he give a hefty sum of health to the Poppy itself, he also has the Mentor buff, which is team-wide damage reduction, and this kind of, like all of your units contribute in comp, and all of your units also have some extra So the Rel Star Guardian bonus gives all your Star Guardians a shield, and the Poppy Star Guardian bonus gives all your Star Guardians an effect where they heal at low health. So even your random backliners, in addition to your tanks, you're getting a lot of value out of this team-wide damage reduction buff. So Kabuko is basically mandatory in this comp. As for the other slots, Braum can be a really strong unit if you hit him. Bastion for your whole team. It's kind of same logic as the Kabuko mentor buff. A team-wide buff that gives you more survivability. You also get more value of it because of the way like different aspects of survivability multiply with each other. Cassante is a pretty common, powerful unit. This protector shield, or this protector passive ability, units gain 5 durability when shielded, applies to all units, not just protectors. So again, there's some synergy with the shield that you get from Rel. If you have like Keeper, for example, that also can get a lot of extra value from just playing the two protector trait. And Cassante himself is a really strong unit. If you have a Star Guardian emblem, you generally want to play him, or play the emblem on him. And Cassante also opens up 2 Wraith is not the biggest thing ever, but it's just kind of free synergy. You can often top with the comp with Varus as well. And let's see, Star Guardian. I guess I'll talk about a kind of an offshoot of Star Guardian, which is Tiny Team. So for those who don't know, Tiny Team is an augment, a gold augment. When you field 3 or less Star Guardians, increase Star Guardian bonuses by 150%. I believe this is probably one of the strongest augments in the entire game. There's no statistics, so I guess there's no proof, but I think the augment is really powerful, and when you get offered it, you should generally look to see if you have an angle to play it. And as for what the actual comp is, so the augment limits you to 3 or fewer Star Guardians. You probably do want to play 3 in order to get the maximum effect. The core of the comp is actually just Xayah and Jinx. So Xayah's Star Guardian bonus, it's magic damage on attack. Jinx's Star Guardian bonus is attack speed. They seem fairly innocuous, but the Xayah magic damage on attack actually does scale with stage, and then when you amplify that by 150% with Tiny Team, it becomes pretty monstrous. So with this augment, the idea is you just play Jinx main carry, Xayah as a secondary carry and supporting unit. And as for what you play with it, there's 2 main versions. One is just you just play 6 Bastion, fairly simple. You have Rel as your 3rd Star Guardian, and you just add the Bastions. 6 Bastion is a fairly cheap and effective frontline. And obviously you will just cap around Braum. You can then proceed to push levels and just add more legendaries, such as like Gwen, TF, Zyra. You may have seen these in other variants of 6 Bastion comps. And that's pretty straightforward. So the other version is a bit more complicated. Generally, you will play around Poppy main tank. Again, the Xayah and the Jinx are fixed. And you actually have a lot of free slots. You can basically play anything that you find. I think Kabuko is generally very important in the setup. Same logic as with the normal vertical Star Guardian comp. You do want heavyweight with Poppy main tank, and the other heavyweights are not particularly appealing. And he also has a, once again, very useful team-wide mentor bonus. Aside from that, you have a lot of freedom to play like whatever you hit. Legendaries are very good if you hit them. For example, like Braum is definitely something you want to cap around. Varus is really good. Stuff like TF or Zyra can fit well. You won't always hit those, so often you'll be playing on some kind of like, say, Volibear, Naruto, Luchador board, and eventually you will drop one of them for Braum. Cassante can be a good unit, though it's kind of awkward because you can't fit Nico with Poppy. You could potentially, if you have, say, like a Cassante 2, Poppy 1, just or get out of the Poppy entirely and play like a Cassante main tank with this variant as well. Shen can be a pretty decent unit. Giving edge load to your Xayah has some value. You can often fit 2 Bastion, for example, just like buy a random Leona 2 as a frontline as well. In any case, there's a lot of flexibility with this version, and you can basically just play whatever reasonable units you hit. And once again, Gather Force has like a bit less value in this version, though it's probably still good. And the items you would expect to be good on Jinx are good, Shojin aside, like Infinity Edge, Flail, Giant Slayer. And if you have Infinity Edge, you can also go for some kind of like Nasher plus Infinity Edge build, though Nasher is kind of dependent on your unit having crit to be effective. And that's the Tiny Team variant of Jinx. Next comp, Mighty Mech. This is a comp that was kind of around, but maybe didn't have too much popularity. I think it's really strong and there's a lot to talk about. So the comp itself is pretty simple. It's just 7 mech. The obvious problem with that is you need to find Yone in order to activate that trait. There's no mech emblem or anything. There's Drift Duo, which I might talk about a little later, but in general, the comp is completely reliant on hitting Yone. So you generally need to have like either a lot of HP to spare in case you don't hit immediately, or like some kind of Giga Econ augment, or an ability to like go to 9 and roll with gold there in order to play it, or something along the lines of like aura farming Yone in order to guarantee it. But when you actually can hit, the comp is really strong, and there's a specific power-up that is very relevant to talk about. That power-up is Mech Pilot. So what this does is the unit pilots the mech, granting it a portion of your stats, eject at 60%, and if you have 2 mech pilot, the mech also benefits from the pilot's trait. So the patch notes here, there was a very relevant change. Mech, cannot type, pilot. So there's a change where if you already have mech pilot, 2 pieces guaranteed. This is very helpful because hitting 2 of a specific power might be kind of difficult. I do believe this is the strongest setup with this comp, 2 mech pilot. So what you want to do is you're willing to kind of like sacrifice the 2-star units in order to just roll for the power up. Like So generally, the units you want to put this on are Lucian and Senna. Again, this is because the mech inherits the traits of the mech pilots. However, it only works if the trait is actually active. So, for example, if you have like I don't know mech pilot Senna, but you're 1 out 2 executioner, that won't actually work. The general comp is just Rise as your +1 on level 8. So you have 7 mech pilot and then Rise that does activate executioner, and then Karma and Lucian you have 2 sorcery, so that will always be active with the comp. So what you would generally want to do is, for example, instead of just upgrading to Senna 2, you could use the power up on Senna 1, and if you miss, you can just sell it and look for additional Sennas as a way to fish for the power up. You might not always need to do that. Maybe you can just hit with your power up removers. And there is a problem which you might not like find enough copies of the unit, Senna or Lucian in your shops in order to actually do the cycling. But if possible, you do want to do it because finding a specific power up is really important. And I guess the other thing to mention is this can be very APM intensive. You generally would do this on your actual roll down turn, and can take a lot of time, so it can be kind of a pain. So another thing is, I guess slightly worth mentioning, this effect, the mech benefits of pilot's traits, it does also work with emblems, so it might be a bit difficult to get there, but for example, if you have something like Flexible that gives you a lot of emblems, or perhaps like Call to Chaos, Emblem Cash Out, you can actually juice up your mech with a lot of extra emblems by putting the emblems on the pilots that you're sucking into it. Once again, you do need the trait to actually be active, so if you have like 1 out of 2 or something, that will not work. But you can have stuff like, for example, like Juggernaut emblem or Heavyweight emblem with Aatrox, Duelist with Gangplank, etc., etc. And the itemization of this comp is fairly flexible because it is a mech primary carry comp. Generally, you will be running like Karma as your itemized carry, so to speak, even though your mech is the one actually putting in most of the heavy lifting. Building utility is really nice because the mech does like both physical and magic, so you have like armor and magic shred. Those are helpful. Having anti-heal is very helpful. You don't get it for free from any of your units or anything like that. Itemizing Jarvan with tank items is completely fine. It's not the best because he's not really a true tank. His best item is just like Protector's Vow, try to get cast off, and itemizing Yone is actually pretty good as well. One other thing you can do is actually put items on the pilots themselves. So part of the power up is the mech gets part of the stats, 60% health, 70% attack damage, ability power, attack speed. So you could put something like a Rabadon's or like a Deathblade on your pilot, and the mech would benefit from that to some extent. I believe that's all to say about that comp. Next we have Protector Kog'Maw. I do want to say, I believe, so I think Kog'Maw is really strong. I think Protector is not actually the strongest version of this comp. We can just go into Explorer and look at this real quick, for example. So Kog'Maw, 3 items, 3-star, and we can just like look at the units to get an idea. Like for example, so this is Emerald Plus. Protectors are like, around 3.87 or so. Scroll down, we go to like the Bastions. They're like 3.81, slightly better, but if we actually increase the rank, which does decrease the sample size, but like the Protectors actually get quite a bit worse, around a 4.0. And then down here you have the Bastions as like 3.9x. Maybe increase rank some more. See like more of a trend of Protectors getting worse. Like now we're around 4.09 or so. The Bastions are still in like the 3.9 range, and the sample size isn't like huge, but like even this is like around 2k games or so, which is pretty reasonable. And just to be like really thorough, we can like make sure we're not just looking at like Shen Hero Augment. If you're playing Shen Hero Augment, you probably have Ginsu on Shen. Let's exclude that. And yeah, the Bastions still like look about the same average. So I think part of this misconception is from this power up known as Caretaker. This is probably Kog'Maw's best power up. On cast, the lowest percent health ally gains shield for 6 seconds. I think there's a bit of a misconception involving the trait Protector trait. Well, I don't know for sure that this is what's going on, but from hearing people talk, this seems to be like what they think. So the Protector trait, units gain 5% durability when shielded, and then there's the part where they shield themselves when they're at 50% health. But as far as I can tell, a lot of people seem to like be under the misconception that this line makes shielding particularly effective with Protectors. It's just 5% durability. For example, if you wanted to play like Juggernauts with shields, at like 6 Juggernaut, you're getting 25% durability, and that 25% durability works entirely with the shields. So like in reality, something like Juggernaut or just Bastion, I don't know the exact math, but like armor and magic resist essentially converts to durability as well, damage reduction. So Protectors actually like don't particularly scale well with shields compared to other tank traits. I guess the trait that least scales with shields is Heavyweight, because bonus health doesn't really make your shield more effective. But basically what I'm trying to say is like Protectors are not particularly good with Kog'Maw, and in fact I think they're a bit on the weaker side because the Protectors as a whole, just like the unit quality is a bit lower. I think the strongest version of Kog'Maw is definitely with Vertical Bastion actually. Bastion I think is just like a bit overtuned relative to the other tank traits. That doesn't mean you can't play like Protector or Kog'Maw, for example. Like Nico 3 is definitely going to be better than a Swain 2, for example. And you can even play something like Juggernaut Kog'Maw if those are the units that show up. Like go back to here, 3 item Kog'Maw, 3-star, maybe a bit more sample size. Like we can also like use the traits tab, I guess. Like 6 Juggernaut, 3.82, extremely reasonable. And I guess the other thing to mention about Kog'Maw is that he has, probably already know, but he has some insane artifacts. Again, 3 item Kog'Maw, 3-star, nothing else. Just look at artifacts. The numbers kind of speak for themselves. Some of these are just completely insane and game winning. So with Artifact augments such as like Lane Torch, Living Torch, for example. Kog'Maw can be really strong to angle. I suppose that's all about Kog'Maw. Prodigy Yumi.
By the way, I filtered out Shen Rageblade, and Protector and Bastion are similar. Bastion slightly better in the stats and has a higher win rate. As Grea was saying, the Bastions have higher unit quality, and there's no 5-cost Protector, but there's a 5-cost Braum, which gives you a higher cap, which accounts for the higher win out percentage.
This is a comp you're probably familiar with a couple of patches ago. So if we go to patch notes, there were some changes to this unit. So what they did was attack speed increased, base page damage increased, starting pages increased, then pages per cast decreased, pages per true damage decreased. Basically, you don't have to think too hard about this. It's just took away a little of the scaling over the course of a fight for some more upfront power. I would say not that much has changed about the comp compared to when it was really strong 2 patches ago. There was actually there was actually something I wanted to look at, or I already looked at it. I just want to show. So Yumi 3 items. Let's go to level 9. Let's exclude some +1s. And I guess this is like a little bit of a stats lesson. So if you just like look at this, we took out Battle Academia +1, whether it's from like Emblem or Golem or whatever. We're looking at level 9 just to like standardize things. If you look at this at face value, you may think, oh, we just want to play Vertical Battle Academia. Jace, Caitlyn look really good. Prodigies look not so good, but then if we just like exclude these 3 stars, Jace 3, Caitlyn 3, Katarina 3, you can scroll down and see that, these units are not actually particularly what you want to be playing. It is in fact just like, oh yeah, that's very relevant. Thank you. So yeah, if we like fix our filters, then see that like you don't particularly, did I mess something else up? No, it looks fine. You can like get some more sample size, I guess. So yeah, this is what I looked at earlier. I looked at this like beforehand. I just kind of forgot. So yeah, if we go back here, it looks like the prodigies are in fact good. We don't actually want to just like play 7 Battle Academia with these other units. So if you, this is the case of where like you have to kind of be thorough with your filtering with the stats to actually see what's going on. And I guess the reason I looked at this in the first place was I remember some people saying that like, oh, maybe we don't want to play Vertical Prodigy with Yumi anymore. You know, maybe we want to play 7 Battle Academia. But as it turns out with Yumi primary carry without like rerolling the other units, it's kind of still just the same comp. Cassante, Vertical Prodigy, 5 Battle Academia. Okay, yeah, not too much to say about Yumi. Heavyweight Malzahar, I think this is like barely even a real comp. I guess I can talk a bit. One very notable thing about heavyweight in general. So this heavyweight reroll involving Darius as your main carry, 6 heavyweight. Generally Smolder is a backliner, but like Malzahar works if that's kind of what your situation is, like you natural all units and or you have AP items. That was really, really strong last patch. They did something very important in the patch notes, which is they removed Fusion Dance. This was by far Darius' strongest power-up in the comp with 6 heavyweight, and it has been removed. So that's kind of just like a nerf already to any kind of like a vertical heavyweight Darius comp in general. I'm sure it's still like playable, especially in good spots, but both the power level comp and the cap have kind of taken a hit. Starguard and Ari, I'm gonna skip this, though I guess this deserves a shout out. Ari with Luden's Tempest is completely obscene, as you may or may not know. You don't have to play Vertical Star Guardian with this. You could play like Vertical Sork. I think it's a bit awkward on like level 7. And the Star Guardian version is a bit less awkward, but in any case, Luden's Ari is just completely obscene. And I suppose I should shout out the power-up, which is Killer Instinct. This is the best power-up with Luden's on Ari. Believes targets the lowest health enemy in range instead, gain 3 mana regen. The idea is simple. You target the low HP units and the tanks, so you proc Luden's. And I guess I should also mention, with this power-up in particular, Killer Instinct on Ari, there's some positioning you can do. Basically, you can second row the Ari, and it can hit the enemy backline. So you can just put the Ari like here, for example, and let's say, I don't know, say they're playing like Yumi or something, and they just have like a random trait bot backliner back here. If you put the Ari second row, she can actually target the back row with Killer Instinct, and you can just like blow up their entire team by hitting a low HP backliner with the Ludens. Though you do need to be same side. Like if you're like over here, you will not be able to reach the backline on this side. But yeah, not too much to say about Ari. Luden's extremely powerful. The comp is probably playable from like a really good spot without it. Ari reroll that is, but I wouldn't particularly look for it. Heavyweight Smolder, I kind of already talked about Darius. Yeah, Darius is fine, but he lost a lot of power from the removal of Fusion Dance. And it's kind of funny that like I think this like MetaTFT thing is showing like the stat items like Warmog, Sterex, Deathblade. You want to like put these on Jace with Fusion Dance and then eat him, but it's not in the game anymore. Battle Academia Caitlyn, maybe familiar with this comp from a few patches ago. 3 cost reroll, Caitlyn Jace duo carry. This was not too strong of a comp last patch, but with a lot of the top comps being nerfed, there's definitely some more potential there. Probably already familiar with it, but do want to do like split positioning. Just to be thorough, I'll just like go through it, I guess. Uh, so if you kind of just like put your Caitlyn in the corner and then have your front line along the two columns, I guess I would call them, on the left and right. Um, just trying to put the Bad Academia units to be like thorough. This will basically cause the enemy front line to move in a way where your Caitlyn can hit the opposite corner directly. It's very annoying to play against. There are some positioning things you can do against it, but it's also kind of dependent on your comp. One thing you do is like decorner your. I guess I can do the full board. One thing is you can like decorner your backliner. So like let's say you're playing against it. You don't put your backline in the corner, your main carry in the corner, then put like a bait unit. Kind of depends on your comp though. Sometimes you like don't have extra range to spare. One thing you try to do is just like be the same side as the Caitlyn, and then the bait unit on the outside will be hit. You can eventually like try to put a unit in the middle. So for example, some comps you have like a random rise trait bot that you don't care about anyway. A melee unit would like just move. That's kind of the point of the positioning. But if you put like a range unit here, then it won't actually move and can like tank the Caitlyn shot potentially. But yeah, this comp is very annoying. You kind of just focus on trying to like one-shot their backliner, and there's stuff you can do against it, but it's not always completely reliable. I guess one thing I want to mention is there's a buff to Silvermere Dawn. As far as I can tell, this is really good on Jace with the caveat that you basically have to build blue buff. So we can just like take a quick look in the stats. So yeah, you see here at surface level, I guess we can 3-star as well. 3-star, 3 on Jace, Silvermere Dawn, plus Delta doesn't look too great. But then if we just put it in, blue buff is at a absolutely staggering almost -1 Delta. So I guess I've talked about this before, but I'll go through it again to be thorough. With the class changes that arrive this set, this item is in kind of a weird place. Jace is an attack fighter. Fighters do not gain mana from taking damage, which is kind of weird for an item like Silvermere, which you want the unit to basically drain tank, take damage, get mana, cast, heal up. Early in the set, Silvermere did actually have an effect that converted a portion of damage taken to mana that was removed. So now, in order to make your unit cast, as an attack fighter, he can only gain mana by attacking and having mana regen. And this item sets your attack speed to 0.5. You probably won't be attacking too much and getting mana from that. So it's basically mandatory that you have a blue buff to give him mana regen to make magic cast. But when you fulfill that condition, it's actually extremely strong. And technically, you can have like another different mana, like adaptive, but it's just going to be a lot weaker than blue buff on him. Star Guardian Jinx, another variant, we can skip that. Bastion Yasuo, to my understanding, this comp is fairly reliant on having a Bastion emblem, if you've played it before. So it's just 3 cost reroll, pretty simple. Yasuo main carry, might as well roll Swain main tank at the same time. 6 Bastion frontline. The problem is Yasuo as a melee carry kind of just sometimes walks up, dies, gets targeted before your tanks, etc. In order to fix that, you generally want either a Bastion emblem or a ranged artifact. So I guess we can look at the stats to prove our point real quick. 6 Bastion, Yasuo 3 items, 3-star items. And as you can see, like Sniper's Focus is the best by far. Rapid Fire Cannon and Fish Runs are not quite as good, but still like reasonable. But yeah, just having a range artifact so he actually like functions as a range carry instead of just walking up and dying is generally pretty important to the comp. Bastion Smolder. This seems to kind of just be like the same comp as before. 6 Bastion, Yasuo reroll, but you have a Smolder. Bastion Zaya. This is a comp from last patch, I guess I can talk about it. I mentioned earlier that like 6 Bastion is kind of just the strongest frontline right now compared to the other traits like Protector, Juggernaut, etc. The traits also work out nicely with this comp. With Shen, your Zaya activates Edgelord. With Rel, she activates Star Guardian. Fairly simple comp. It's just 2 cost reroll. You can go for Shen or Xin 3-star or both if the opportunity allows. Zaya's your main carry. Adding Jinx is very nice for the Star Guardian bonus. She gives additional attack speed to your Zaya, and this is basically a Zaya solo carry comp. In some situations, you might be able to kind of like branch out into like rerolling Yasuo as well, but you generally won't have the spot for that with this type of comp. And I guess I should mention, if you're already playing the comp, Tiny Team is completely amazing. I did call Tiny Team like a Jinx only comp, but this is basically the same comp, but with a Zaya main carry. Soul Fighter Viego. Viego took some heavy nerfs. We just put up patch notes real quick. So Viego, base attack speed nerf. This is generally very huge. For those familiar, these kind of nerfs look kind of innocuous, but nerfing the base of a stat also kind of nerfs like any kind of scaling with it. Like for example, you're building he built Ginsu on him. Ginsu gives % attack speed, and that % is going to be lower because the base is lower. So this is actually a massive nerf to Viego. And I guess there's another thing worth mentioning, which is Stretchy Arms, which was his best power up, has just been removed from the game. So go to our Handy Dandy Explorer. Viego, 3-star, 3 items. See that as with last patch, he's actually really strong with a variety of artifacts. The range artifacts are pretty good on him. Fish Buns is not so great, but RC and Snipers are good. This hasn't really changed from last patch. Like Wits End and Flicker are both very good. Zanya's, which is kind of just like a beefed up Edge of Night, which is a strong item on him, is very good. He's definitely still a playable unit. I would argue he was like on the too strong side last patch, but the base stat nerf and also the removal of his best power up does make life a little difficult, and I would hesitate to play him without like an exceptionally good spot and or an artifact. But he's definitely still viable. And the comp is simple. You're probably already familiar from last patch. It's just vertical soul fighter. Generally, you play like an Udyr for 2 duelist, and also to like the mentor buff is better than like anything else you could play. Not too much to say about that. So another Jinx variant, Mentor Rise. I think this comp has seen better days. It has like a pretty strong cap with like Lee Sin 2 itemized, but in general, compared to some of the other 4-cost comps like Soul Fighter, Star Guardian, I think it's just a bit on the weaker side. Sorcerer Karma, this comp has not really changed in like principle the entire set. You know, it's had its ups and downs in power level. Definitely a playable comp. Still learning the patch, don't know for sure, but I would probably not put it on the same level as the top 4-cost comps, but from the right spot, it can definitely be reasonable comp. And in particular, I think one thing is more than many of the other 4-cost comps in the game, this comp is really, really reliant on hitting at least one copy of Gwen as a dual carry versus like Star Guardian. You really want Seraphine and you cap around her, but not hitting that one Seraphine on like a level 8 rolldown is not as crippling. Soulfire does really want Gwen as well, but I think the base power like without the 5 cost is a bit higher. Whereas with Sorcerer, if you don't have that one Gwen, your level 8 comp actually suffers a lot. Katarina, she did get a pretty massive buff. I can go back to patch notes. Ability damage buff. This unit has been on the weaker side for a while now after earlier nerfs in the set. I haven't seen too much, but from the early my early impressions of her, she's definitely like at least playable. Go to explore real quick. Arena 3 items, and the number looks fairly promising, and there's a lot of artifacts as well that can work real her. Zonia's, Dawncore, Seeker's Wit's End. Definitely would be willing to play her from a real slot. And oh, another thing I just want to mention, they did enable Veteran, so as I mentioned here, on the tactics power up page. So Veteran is power up. It turns the unit into a mentor. They grant 4% damage amp and a mentor 4. They gain 35 attack damage and ability power instead of upgrading the spell. Katarina is one of the units that can get this power up, so there's definitely some potential there. Just looking like surface level, let's look at this 3-item, 3-star Katarina, 4 mentor, 4.21. It's not like exceptional, but it definitely looks completely reasonable. I think there's definitely some room to experiment with that power up in that version of the comp. Heavyweight Darius, this is like something we looked at earlier. This is fan service, which to my understanding is just not a good comp. As we get down here to the bottom of the page, there's some suspicious comps that may or may not want to play. Crystal Gambit, so we can talk about Ashe, I guess. There were quite a few changes to Ashe in the patch. So they stated that they didn't like how Ashe was too dependent on attack speed, so what they did was increase the base spell damage, but the number of arrows per attack no longer scales attack speed. As far as I can tell, this change was kind of disastrous for Ashe. We just like they don't tell the full picture. If you just go to unit stats, 5.05 does not look very promising, and I know players who've tried Ashe on the new patch so far have not been very happy with her. And the other thing I want to talk about was running Crystal Gambit, so they made some changes to this trait as well. So the multiplier stage 3 and 4 has been increased. It just means you get more gem power from playing this trait in stages 3 and 4. 210 rewards have been downgraded from Artifact Anvil to Random Artifact. 250 rewards, 1 radiant item to 1 lucky item chest plus 12 gold is also a downgrade. And then I guess they didn't want to write out all the specifics, but Crystal Gambit, high reward breakpoints reduced. So generally the rewards are being reduced, but it's easier to get to the higher tiers because the multiplier has been increased. And then 5 Crystal Gambit kill thresholds have been decreased, so that is a buff. And then 7 Crystal Gambit, the base stats that it gives to your Crystal Gambit units, flat health and damage jump have been nerfed. So all in all, from what I've seen, 7 Crystal Gambit is on the weaker side this patch. In particular, the Ashe nerf means the unit itself is, which you would be carrying as your primary carry in a 7 Crystal Gambit comp, is not very appealing. It definitely still has a lot of win-out potential. You can kind of surf solve, but if we just look at like 7 Crystal Gambit as a trait, 30% win rate is pretty crazy. And honestly, the average placement looks very good, but from what I've seen, there's a lot more power in just playing Crystal Gambit for like maybe 1 double down in the mid game on stage 3 and 4. I remember seeing a clip of someone who they only played it for 6 rounds, so the 3 base rounds plus double downing once, and they got like I think 3 completed item anvils. So even though
by the way.
the power has been taken off like the vertical trait, I think playing around 3 Crystal Gambit when you have, for example, health to spare in the mid game has a lot of value. It's a way to cap out higher with more resources. Again, like 7 Crystal can definitely win, but it requires like a much better spot than compared to previous patches, as a lot of the power was in like stage 4. If you can just hit the 7 Crystal Gambit, all these base stats can help you win those rounds and scale into the later portion of the game and farm more loot, and now those base stats have been reduced. The crew, this comp hasn't changed that much, I guess. I guess you can talk about 2 different comps. Both are like Malphite reroll as your main tank. You can either go for like vertical crew with the end goal is Ziggs main carry when you hit that, but you often will carry Sivir as like a mid game if you hit her 3-star. And then there's the Jhin main carry comp with more vertical snipers instead of vertical crew. You're probably familiar with both comps already. Not too much to say about that comp. I believe there were no real changes, or there's like a little bit of a nerf to the trait. The crew-based rocket damage has been reduced. The big change is actually in the previous patch where Malphite was actually nerfed quite a bit, and he's kind of the thing that holds either comp together. Definitely playable from like decent spot. I'd say both comps are relatively on the expensive side. You're looking for quite a lot of 3 stars. That doesn't mean you need an Econ Eggman necessarily, but it can be hard to get to the endgame board, particularly for the crew version where you're looking for a 3-star 3 cost and Zig as well without some extra juice. I believe this is just Mundo Hero Augment. That was some rather big nerfs. Give him the chair, Dr. Mundo, spell damage decreased quite a bit, and if we just look at the stats real quick, 3-item Mundo, 3-star. We look at like the item, doesn't actually look that bad. If we look at last patch, just for a point comparison, somewhere in the like maybe 3.4 to 3.5, 3.6 range, and then we head back to this patch. It's more in the like 3.8 to 3.9, 4.0 range, so it definitely took a big hit. I'm sure this augment's still like playable from the right spots, but compared to last patch where you just saw the augment, you don't really care if you have any Mundos or not or anything like that, any units, just rip it. Does seem quite a fair bit worse. Prodigy Yumi Leona, another Duke comp. Kale, this is I believe she did get changed, yes. Oh no, Kale did not get changed. From what I've seen, Kale doesn't seem too effective this patch. It's hard to say for sure. It's always been a very like feast or famine comp. You want to not only reroll and hit the 3 stars, generally just kill 3 Zac 3, but also make it a 9 eventually. And generally, if you make it a 9, you do kind of win out, or at the very least, you'll be really strong. And if you don't make it, well, that means you didn't make it and you're dead. Definitely would be willing to play Kale from certain spots, but it doesn't look too great from what I've seen so far. Any other comps I particularly want to talk about? Protector Akali, I have not seen this do too well recently, or on the patch. Akali did get some buffs. Single target damage increased, dash damage increased. I think they are pretty wary about this unit. When she was actually good, she was obviously absurdly frustrating to play against. I don't think it's too good, but you could keep an eye out for it. Perhaps there'll be some Akali success as the patch develops. Kaisa, I don't think the unit's completely unplayable, but if we just look at really surface level filter, Kaisa 3-star, 3 items, 4.45, that is not good at all compared to like a different 2 cost. For example, like Zaya 3-item 3-star is a 4.2. I mean, we looked at it earlier, we can look at it again. Katarina 3-star DMs is like a 4.2, so surface level look suggests this unit is not very good. It was actually last patch that she got some pretty heavy nerfs. I believe there weren't any changes this patch, just some like power-ups changes. The unit is really dependent on kind of snowballing stage 3, getting kills, getting more AD, that helps you win more fights to get more AD, so not too surprised that she's not doing too hot after some heavy nerfs. And there are some other comps that could be talked about, but I think they're like kind of more on the super niche side, not, I guess, Duelist Ashe. This comp just looks kind of dead. You may be familiar with it from previous patches. Colossal Udyr, Vertical Duelist, Ashe and Carry. They did specifically say that they wanted to kind of decouple Ashe's strength away from attack speed scaling, so I guess it's not too surprising that the comp that just gives Ashe a lot of attack speed is not doing so hot. Oh, I want to talk about Monster Trainer. So pretty big change this patch. Monster Trainer level up system removed. Monsters no longer gain 1% max health per level, and this is just removing monster from risk game rewards. So what they've done is kind of take away the scaling power of monsters, but increase the baseline strength. I think here, yeah. So if you look further at the individual changes, Kog'Maw, extra range, extra base attack speed, extra on-hit damage, similar buffs for Rammus and Smolder. So before, pretty much all the monsters were really weak until you hit at least like level 15, and then they also gained a lot of power from hitting level 30 as well. Now the level system doesn't exist at all. The monsters are a lot baseline stronger, which is, what this means is if you wanted to play a comp involving Monster Trainer, for example, Kog'Maw reroll, it's a lot less mandatory that you find the monster as soon as possible, and you have a lot more leeway to like, say, like 3-cost reroll. Often you'll find a pattern where you're ruling on, say, 4-1 and level 7. With the previous system, that's kind of too little too late. If you don't find any copies of your monster earlier, and you just roll on 4-1, you'll have a level 1 monster, and it'll be completely underwhelming, and bad things will probably happen to you. But now, it doesn't matter when you find your first copy of the monster, whether you get it on stage 2 or you don't get it until like 4-1. It'll still have like that much higher baseline power. And that also does probably mean that like there's a lot more situations to kind of flex a monster in your comp. For example, with other reroll comps, where even if the monster isn't the main focus, if you have like a free slot, you can perhaps look for like, maybe you want some extra frontline, you can incorporate Rammus in your comp. There's some utility as well on like Kog'Maw, he armor and magic shreds, and then Smolder anti-heals. There's definitely like some potential there with the monster training change. And there's some more I want to talk about. We can kind of just go through the patch notes. I think I've said what I wanted to about like the actual comps themselves. So yeah, we can go through the patch. There's Crystal Gambit, talked about this earlier. Kennen, that's not really a big deal. Gangplank Katarina, it's whatever. Ahri buff, again, I don't think she's like some insane unit that you particularly want to look for, unless you have Ludens, but if you, natural bunch of Ahris, definitely could be some spot. Monster Trainer changes, Viego nerf, mentioned that. Zig's attack speed buff. In theory, this is really nice for crew, but a lot of the power of the comp is in the trait instead of the actual units, so I don't think Zig's going to be some superstar that you want to just start putting in every comp. Akali, Ashe, Samira, AI change, Volibear. I guess could mention Volibear. Volibear buff. As far as I can tell, there's not like that much, or there hasn't been that much success with like Volibear primary carry comps, as you might have remembered earlier in the set. But Volibear can be a pretty potent secondary carry. In like Soul Fighter with Samira, in like kind of the like Tiny Team Jinx Flex type comps. I've seen some players play those kind of comps even without a Tiny Team. And also in stuff like, Edgelord reroll or Bastion reroll with like either Yasuo or Xayah, there definitely could be room to like incorporate a Volibear. I think he is a pretty strong secondary carry. Yumi, Seraphine, Braum, augment changes. Took out a lot of the pretty unpopular crests and crowns. In theory, this kind of increases like the average quality of augment you'll see. If that makes sense. Maybe not the biggest change because the augment pool is pretty large. And there's some other minor things. I believe beggars can be choosers was removed because there's a very weird situation where, because the prismatic pool is not that large, if you rolled all your prismatic options on 3-2 and 4-2 with the extra rolls from beggars, you can make some very strange things happen, like 9 lives being offered on 4-2, for example, when the pool is exhausted. So I think that's why this was removed. The others are just like probably on the weaker side. Players weren't picking them. Other augment changes, another one gold. Aura farming, you may have been familiar with this change. This is a very scary change. 4-3 is very early. I think this augment is probably obscenely powerful right now. Bronze for life buff. This augment has kind of just been always like, is there a comp that kind of naturally already plays a bunch of bronze traits to take advantage of it? But for those kind of comps, it's probably pretty a pretty nice buff. Caretaker's chosen. Oh, this one, I think this might just kill the augment. The difference between level 7 and 8, it makes your mid game a lot worse. Oftentimes when you're playing for like a level 8 comp, you would level to 7 on 3-5, and having a radiant for like a few extra rounds give you a lot of power. There's also like the recost reroll was, for example, extremely playable with this augment. You are doing most of your rolling on level 7, so you kind of get your radiant there and spike. Moving this level 8 actually takes a lot of power of this augment. Care package, I've heard reports that this augment is bugged at the moment, so it was changed to grant rewards when selected and at the start of the next 2 stages. So that should be, you take on 3-2, and then you get rewards stage 4 and 5. I've heard reports that as of now, you don't actually get any rewards on stage 5, as in it's just bugged, and that's all it is. So I would stay away from it until there's some confirmation that the bug has been fixed. All these are kind of, I guess I can mention 9 lives. I think this is probably not too strong an augment after the after these changes. In particular, the 1 life reward, the masterwork, which is by far the best thing you could hit, extremely powerful, has been removed, and also a small nerf to the 2 life rewards. Perfect form, I believe this augment is just dead now. We can do a quick check. Exact 3 items, 3 or more star. Jewel Gauntlet 4.4-ish range. I mean, if we go back to last patch, this was almost a full placement better, 3.3-ish. Probably not completely unpickable, but right now I am filtering 3 and 4 stars. That includes protagonist. If we just look at the augmented base, assuming you're not taking 3 star, this is not a completely accurate picture. Looking at 3 star alone does also include players who had protagonist but died before making it to the 4 star. So it's not quite this bad, but it does look like these nerfs are hitting Zac pretty hard, or the Zac hero augment pretty hard. Bit of extra. Leave nothing too big here. Quicksilver buff. Not the biggest thing ever. It's an item that you weren't really happy to make in most situations, I think. So now, when you happen to be in those situations, you're a little happier. Titan's change. No longer grants armor and magic resist. Now grants damage and max stats. Kind of hard to say how this affects anything. I mean, often Titans is built on like these kind of melee carries, which can also be like drain tanks. For example, like a lot of units, like for example Darius, you might see Titans paired with Bloodthirster, stuff like that. So the magic resist, armor and magic resist definitely was not bad in most cases on those units. Hard to say too much. It's probably like a side grade, though maybe time will tell. Some radiant changes. I guess, do you want to mention Radiant Giant Slayer was probably by far the best Radiant in most situations, or overall at least. It was best in slot on most damage dealing units last patch, so definitely happy to see that get toned down a little. Artifacts. I mentioned Silvermere with Chase earlier. Trenchcoat was disabled. It did not work with power-ups, so probably we'll see that re-enabled at some point in future sets, but it just doesn't really work with set mechanic. Talisman and Moguls, not the biggest deals. So there were a lot of changes to power-ups this patch. I kind of mentioned some of these earlier, where like Fusion Dance, Stretchy Arms were really strong on Darius and Viego. They were removed from the game. Most of these other ones are just like powers that were on the weaker side and or just weren't picked often by players. Rare Tree are just disabled because the Monster Trainer level system has been removed. So there were also some power-up reworks. Some of these are kind of relevant in that, for example, Mech Pilot no longer has a stage restriction. Stuff like that can definitely affect how. So I mentioned earlier that Mech Pilot is probably the strongest setup you can have with the 7 Mighty Mech comp. Having a stage restriction can make things awkward in that, like, if you don't find the power up quickly enough, then you just lose the ability to find it altogether. So removing stage restriction on that helps with that. There's some stuff like Golden Edge and Max Vitality no longer work on PV rounds. This is a nerf, but I think this is more just like standardizing things, making sure everything's kind of consistent. Like there's some stuff that never work on PV rounds, and then you have something that did, so it's just kind of weird and awkward. Some balance changes here as well. Not too big a deal either way, probably. This is probably the bigger change with regards to power up. They did a lot of changes with regards to units power pools. In particular, they tried to remove a lot of the kind of power ups that didn't really make sense on certain units and increase the weight of certain power ups that units might want. I guess I don't want to like look at all of them, but kind of scroll down and try to point out some ones that I think are worth mentioning. Which is probably not going to be the one costs for the most part. So Jin, Spirit Sword Jin, you may be familiar with, is actually really strong with him. On him, what this power does, I guess, is pretty niche. We can just be thorough. Gain 20% crit chance, attacks that quickly strike deal 30% bonus magic damage. This was actually nerfed this patch as well, I believe. It was previously 40. Yeah, Spirit Sword bonus magic damage 40 to 30. So this was really strong on Jin with crit builds. Generally, you would want like 2 or more crit items, for example, like Striker's Full Infinity Edge, and is actually a very strong damage power up for Jin. But so the weight of it is a lot higher. Now it's been moved to primary, but the power itself was nerfed, so hard to say. But I'm sure it's still acceptable with a crit kind of build. Kaisa. So Kaisa had a pretty large pool of very strange power-ups that didn't really make sense on her. Like Hungry Hero, I don't know why this was ever here. Some of these more attack speed focused ones were strange as well, even though she is a duelist and does get attack speed. The unit itself is like a very ability focused caster unit. Most of her damage was in her ability, so stuff like the Huna Desperado didn't really make sense on her. So in theory, this change should give a lot of power to Kaisa. A lot of these kind of just completely useless powers on her were removed. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, the unit itself is just kind of in a weak state right now after the nerfs from the previous patch. Katarina, I did mention earlier that Katarina seems a lot better on this patch compared to previous ones. She did get a actual buff as well, as I mentioned earlier, but this change is really nice. I think Crimson Veil, strong power up on her. She doesn't have any innate Omnivamp, so yeah, it's just a good power up on her, and some of these strange power-ups that didn't really make sense were removed. Let's see, anything else? Did mention earlier that Darius was hit pretty hard by his best power-up fusion dance being removed from the game. They moved a bit of other stuff around. Don't think it's like too relevant. Kog'Maw. So Kog'Maw is a really power-dependent unit. Generally, the best power on him is Caretaker. Second would probably be Fairy Tail, and I think there's a fairly steep fall-off after that in terms of how much the various power-ups do for him. So removing some of these weak power-ups on him definitely does give him a bit of a boost. Anything else? Viego, some of these not so useful power-ups were removed, but again, he lost his favorite power-up in Stretchy Arms, so overall, still not too great for him. Most of these are kind of whatever. Cassante, this is so Cassante had some weird power-ups like weights and warming up. These are more like fighter power-ups, but the unit is not really a fighter. He's a tank, and in particular, weights is really strange because this is a scaling power-up that requires you to die repeatedly. But as a 4-cost, you probably wouldn't find him earlier to even take advantage of this. So removing some of this strange stuff is nice for him. Karma. Karma actually is another unit that has some very strange power-ups, like Super Genius, gives ability power based on mana regen, but she's not a prodigy. She's a sorcerer, she already has AP. She doesn't have a lot of innate mana regen. This is just weird. Caretaker, I don't know why this was here. So I think the Karma power pool was definitely very awkward. It's still kind of awkward probably because I think by far her best power up mathematically is Mage. So you really are just looking at that, but taking away some of these strange things is nice. And I guess that's kind of just the trend with a lot of these units. Just there were just some strange power-ups that didn't really make sense, and they're being trimmed away. I mentioned earlier, I think Samira's strongest power-up is on the edge, so moving it to primary, increasing the frequency with which you'll see that is actually a pretty nice buff to her. And then some of this other strange stuff is gone. Yumi actually was a unit that I thought was very awkward in her pool of power-ups. There's a lot of just weird stuff that doesn't make sense, like stuff like Fairy Tail and Caretaker. Even though she is a prodigy and does want to cast a lot, you just did not want these power-ups at all. So glad to see some of this stuff get removed. And stuff like this actually is, I'm kind of brushing it off in some cases, but stuff like this can actually be a really nice buff to some of these units and comps. Braum had a huge change in terms of his power ups. I will say, I believe Braum's strongest power up was efficient, so that being removed is kind of strange. I will say Braum is not a unit that you particularly want to put a power up on in past situations. Like efficient was really good, but there was just a large pool of strange power ups that he didn't really want. I'm not sure if you'll particularly want to power him up now, but probably not. I think efficient was what you were looking for, and now that's just gone. I don't know why Echo ever had over 9,000, but sure. Definitely a lot of power changes. I'm kind of just skimming through them. There might be some like more consequential things, but yeah, I believe that's all. So if anyone has any questions, comments, whatever, feel free to speak up. That's basically all I had in mind to talk about for this patch.
All right. Thanks for watching Grea's talk. I've definitely learned some stuff from it, especially actually that protectors grant durability for all your units. I didn't actually know that. But a lot of this stuff is pretty consistent. I think the big thing is that Jinx Star Guardian is the just most reliable forecast at the moment. But there are a lot of conditional plays, and uh, there's definitely some imbalance, but I found some pretty good success at the start of the patch with just playing very consistent and not just trying to play strongest board as much as possible. So that's been working out for me. Anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Grea's talk in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.